I never meant to notice her like that, my best friend's mom. But the night she caught me staring, she smiled and whispered, "Don't look at me like that, or do." That was the moment everything changed. I didn't expect anything unusual that afternoon. I was just dropping by to see my friend, like I had countless times before. His house was familiar, almost ordinary to me. The wooden porch that creaked when you stepped on it, the faint sound of a television always playing somewhere inside, the smell of freshly brewed coffee drifting through the hallway. But the moment the door opened, it wasn't my friend standing there. It was his mother. She smiled when she saw me. A soft, practiced smile that carried warmth but also a kind of quiet gravity. She looked effortlessly graceful, the way some people just are without trying. Her hair was pulled back loosely, a few strands escaping to frame her face. She wore something simple, maybe just a fitted blouse and jeans, but it was the way she carried herself that caught me. There was a steadiness in her, a composure that made me suddenly, uncomfortably aware of myself. "Hi," she said, her voice gentle but strong, and she opened the door wider. "Come in. He'll be down in a minute." As I stepped inside, she placed her hand lightly on my arm, just for a second, guiding me in. That small touch should have meant nothing, just a casual gesture. But for some reason, it stayed with me. The warmth of her hand, the softness of her skin, the way my pulse quickened when she let go. I told myself not to stare, but it was harder than I expected. She moved with an ease that drew my eyes without permission. The faint scent of her perfume lingered in the hallway, subtle and floral, and I found myself inhaling just a little deeper than I should have. We exchanged a few casual words, about school, about how fast the week had gone. She asked if I wanted something to drink while I waited, her tone polite but laced with a kind of attentiveness that made me feel noticed. And when our eyes met, really met, it was as though the air shifted. For a brief moment, too long to be an accident, she held my gaze. Not just the polite eye contact of a conversation, but something heavier, something that seemed to search me. I felt exposed, like she could see all the thoughts I was trying to push down. I quickly looked away, pretending to study a family photo on the wall, but it was too late. The awareness had sparked between us, subtle but undeniable. It was in that moment, standing in the same hallway I'd stood in 100 times before, that I realized nothing about this visit felt ordinary anymore. And though she said nothing, the faint curve of her lips when she noticed my stolen glance told me she had felt it too. I was only supposed to wait a few minutes. My friend had gone upstairs to grab something, leaving me alone in the living room with her. His mom. She moved around the space with an easy grace, straightening a cushion here, picking up a magazine there, as if keeping herself busy while I sat awkwardly at the edge of the couch. Every so often, she glanced my way, not enough to be obvious, but enough that I felt it. "You're quieter than usual today," she said finally, her tone light but observant. She was leaning against the doorway now, arms folded loosely, a faint smile touching her lips. I shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Just a long day, I guess." She tilted her head slightly, studying me. The way her eyes lingered made it hard to breathe steadily. There was something about her attention, sharp, but also warm, that made me feel both seen and exposed. "You remind me of him sometimes," she said, meaning my friend. "But other times," her voice trailed, and she shook her head, almost as if she'd said more than she intended. That silence stretched between us, and I found myself watching her too closely. The way she tapped her finger lightly against her arm, the gentle curve of her smile, the faint glow of the late afternoon light brushing across her face. My gaze lingered longer than it should have. She caught it. Her eyes narrowed slightly, though not in disapproval, more like curiosity. And then, with a teasing softness, she spoke. "Don't look at me like that." My stomach tightened. Heat rose to my face. I opened my mouth, searching for some excuse, some way to laugh it off. But before I could, she added, quieter this time, almost under her breath. Or do. The words landed heavier than they should have, as if the air between us thickened. For a second, all I could hear was the soft ticking of the clock on the wall and the sudden, uneven rhythm of my own heartbeat. I shifted slightly, unsure what to do with myself, but she only smiled, that half smile that carried both playfulness and something else, something unspoken. To break the tension, she moved toward the coffee table, picking up the empty glass I'd left there. Her fingers brushed mine lightly as she did. Whether by accident or not, I couldn't tell. That simple touch sent a jolt through me. She didn't comment. Neither did I. The moment passed, or at least we pretended it did. She carried the glass into the kitchen, and I sat back, trying to steady myself. But the echo of her words, "Don't look at me like that," or "do," lingered louder than anything else. It was playful. It was nothing. At least that's what I told myself. But deep down, I knew it wasn't nothing at all. It was supposed to be quick. I had stopped by to see my friend, but he'd rushed out with a promise to be back soon, leaving me awkwardly standing in the entryway. "You don't have to just sit there waiting," his mom said with a little laugh. "Come on. At least let me make you some tea." Part of me wanted to politely decline, to keep a safe distance from whatever strange tension had begun to form between us. But another part, the part one wasn't ready to admit to myself, was drawn to her. So I nodded. We ended up sitting at the kitchen table, just the two of us. The warm yellow light above us softened the edges of the room, and the steam rising from our mugs curled lazily into the air. For a while, the only sounds were the clink of porcelain against wood and the quiet hum of the refrigerator. She was the first to speak. "You're close with him," she said, meaning her son. "Yeah," I answered, smiling faintly. "He's like a brother to me." Her expression softened at that. "I'm glad. He needs people like you in his life." She paused, her fingers circling the rim of her cup. "Sometimes I worry he doesn't realize how lucky he is." There was a vulnerability in her voice then, something unguarded that caught me off guard. For the first time, she wasn't just my friend's mother. She was a woman sharing her thoughts, her worries, her heart. I leaned forward slightly. "You've done a good job with him. He's a good guy. That's because of you." Her eyes lifted to mine, surprised. A soft laugh escaped her lips, but there was no humor in it. Only disbelief. "You give me too much credit. Some days I wonder if I'm enough, you know? If I've already passed the best years of my life." Something in me pushed against those words. I shook my head. "No, I don't think so. Honestly, you seem more alive, more radiant than most people I know. I don't think your best years are behind you at all." The compliment hung between us, heavier than I intended. Her gaze lingered on me for a long moment, searching, almost as if trying to decide whether to believe me. Then, slowly, she smiled. Not polite this time, but soft and real. She reached to gather the plates we'd finished, brushing past me as she stood. Her hand touched mine briefly when she picked up my cup, and the contact was electric. Too brief, too casual to mean anything, yet too much to mean nothing. The quiet stretched again as she moved about the kitchen. But now it was different, comfortable, intimate. I sat there, watching the light catch in her hair, the way she hummed softly under her breath. And I realized, with a weight I couldn't ignore, I wanted more of these moments. More of her. It was late by the time I finally stood to leave. My friend still hadn't returned, and though part of me knew I should have gone long before, I hadn't been able to tear myself away. She walked me to the door, her steps quiet on the wooden floor. Outside, the porch light glowed softly, cutting through the cool night air. I shoved my hands into my pockets, Not because I was cold, but because I didn't know what else to do with them. "Thanks for keeping me company," she said, her voice carrying that gentle warmth I'd come to crave. "It's nice, having someone to talk to." I turned to look at her, and for a moment I couldn't speak. The way the porch light softened her features, the way her eyes seemed brighter against the shadows. She was beautiful in a way that felt both effortless and entirely overwhelming. "You don't have to thank me," I managed, my voice lower than I intended. "I like talking to you." Her expression shifted then, a flicker of something vulnerable, something unguarded. She stepped a little closer, close enough that I could feel the faint brush of her shoulder against mine. My chest tightened. We stood there in silence, the kind that says everything words can't. The quiet hum of crickets filled the space around us, but between us, there was only the thrum of awareness. She looked at me, really looked, her gaze holding mine with a weight that made it hard to breathe. For a moment I thought she might say something, or maybe I hoped she would. Her lips parted slightly, as though words were right there, but she stopped herself. "I shouldn't," she whispered, almost too softly to hear. Then, shaking her head, she looked away, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to bridge the gap, to say what had been pressing against my chest all evening. "You make me feel something I can't explain. I can't stop thinking about you." But the words lodged in my throat, heavy and impossible. Instead, I let the silence speak. Her hand brushed against mine as she shifted. Whether by accident or not, I couldn't tell. My fingers twitched, aching to hold on to hers, but I couldn't. The weight of what it would mean, of who she was, kept me frozen. Finally, she let out a soft sigh, almost like resignation. "Good night," she said, her voice steadier now, though her eyes betrayed the storm beneath. "Good night," I echoed, my own voice rough with everything I hadn't said. I stepped off the porch, the cool night air hitting me all at once. But even as I walked away, I felt the warmth of her presence clinging to me, the echo of her nearness impossible to shake. We hadn't confessed a thing, yet somehow it felt like everything had already been said. The next time I saw her, everything felt different. She greeted me politely, as always, but her smile didn't linger the way it used to. Her eyes avoided mine, flitting past me as though it were easier not to look at me at all. The warmth I'd grown used to, the little touches, the playful comments, it was gone. I told myself I was imagining it, but I wasn't. Something had shifted. Later that evening, when my friend ran upstairs to grab his jacket, I found myself alone with her again in the kitchen. The silence between us was heavier than it should have been. She was drying a glass with a towel, her movements sharp, almost restless. Cleared my throat. "You've been quiet. Did I do something?" She set the glass down a little harder than necessary, then turned to face me. For the first time, there was no teasing smile, no softness, just a guarded expression. "You didn't do anything," she said carefully, though her voice wavered at the edges. "But this," she gestured vaguely between us, "whatever it is, it can't happen." Her words landed like a stone in my chest. I opened my mouth to argue, but she cut me off. "You're my son's friend," she continued, her voice firmer now. "I shouldn't even be letting this, whatever this is, get as far as it has." I felt heat rise in my face. Not anger, but something close, a mix of frustration and helplessness. "I know what it looks like," I said quietly, "but I can't just pretend nothing's there." Her eyes finally met mine, and in them I saw the truth she was trying to hide. The pull was there for her too, but instead of giving in, she shook her head, almost desperately. "You need to forget it. We need to forget it." I wanted to tell her I couldn't, that every look, every accidental brush of her hand, Every word we'd shared had carved itself too deeply into me. But before I could, my friend's voice echoed down the stairs. The spell broke. She turned away quickly, picking up the glass again, her back to me as if that small distance might erase what she'd just said. I stood there frozen, caught between wanting to reach for her and knowing I had no right to. When my friend came back into the room, everything looked normal again. She smiled at him, chatted easily, carried on as though nothing had passed between us. But for me, the air still felt heavy, thick with everything we weren't saying. When I finally left that night, she walked me to the door. For a moment, I thought she might soften, might say something to undo the sting of her words. But instead, she simply offered a polite nod. "Good night," she said, her tone neutral. I murmured the same, but the goodbye felt colder than any winter night. And as I stepped outside, I realized the worst part wasn't her pulling away. The worst part was knowing she'd only pulled away because she felt it too. Days turned into weeks. I told myself I'd keep my distance, give her space, let whatever this was fade away. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about her. The sound of her laugh, the way her eyes softened when she looked at me, the lingering warmth of her touch. When I finally did see her again, it wasn't planned. My friend had stepped out for a quick errand, leaving me alone in the living room. I hadn't expected her to be there, but she appeared in the doorway, holding a book in her hand, pausing when she saw me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It was as if all the unsaid words from the last encounter filled the air between us, pressing down like a weight. "You've been avoiding me," she said finally. Her voice wasn't accusing, just tired. I swallowed. "I thought it's what you wanted." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "Maybe it is, but that doesn't make it easy." I gestured toward the couch, and after a moment's hesitation, she sat beside me. Not too close, not too far. Just enough that the warmth of her presence seeped through the space between us. For a while, we sat in silence, the ticking of the clock filling the room. Then she spoke again, her voice softer this time. "Do you know how long it's been since someone looked at me the way you do?" I turned toward her, my chest tightening. She wasn't looking at me now, but at her hands folded in her lap. "It makes me feel seen, alive even, and that terrifies me." Her honesty disarmed me. I wanted to reach for her, to take her hand, but I held back. "You deserve to be seen," I said quietly. "You deserve so much more than you let yourself believe." Her eyes lifted to mine then, and I saw the vulnerability she usually hid so well. Slowly, almost tentatively, she placed her hand on my wrist. Her touch was feather light, but it grounded me, tethered me to the moment. "I keep telling myself this isn't right," she whispered, "that I should push you away for good. But when I'm near you," she trailed off, shaking her head as if the words themselves were too dangerous. I leaned in slightly, my voice low, steady. "When you're near me, I feel like I can't breathe, and I don't want that to stop." Her hand lingered on my wrist, her thumb brushing against my skin in a slow, absent motion. The intimacy of it nearly undid me. We didn't kiss. We didn't cross any lines. But in that quiet moment, her hand on mine, our hearts beating far too fast, we admitted everything without saying a word. The evening was quiet when it finally happened. My friend had gone upstairs to grab something, leaving us once again in that familiar, dangerous stillness. We were sitting on the couch, just a little too close. I could feel the heat of her presence brushing against me, the way her arm rested along the cushion only inches from mine. Neither of us spoke at first, and in that silence, my heart thundered louder than I could bear. At last, she turned toward me, her expression softer than I'd ever seen it. There was no teasing in her smile, no careful distance, just honesty. "You make things complicated," she said gently, her voice almost a whisper. I gave a faint, nervous laugh. I don't mean to. I know, she replied, her gaze locking on mine. That's why it scares me. Her words should have hurt, but the way she said them, tender, vulnerable, only pulled me closer. Without thinking, I lifted a hand, brushing a strand of hair that had fallen loose across her cheek. My fingers barely grazed her skin, but the contact made my breath catch. She didn't pull away. Instead, she closed her eyes briefly, leaning ever so slightly into my touch before opening them again. This shouldn't happen, she murmured. But it feels like it already has. I searched her face, every line, every shadow, as if memorizing her in that moment. My voice was quiet, unsteady. Then maybe we don't need to call it anything. Maybe we just let it be what it is. For a long moment, she simply looked at me, as though weighing every unspoken risk, every unspoken desire. Then, slowly, she reached up and cupped my face in her hand. Her palm was warm against my cheek, her thumb brushing lightly along my skin in a gesture so tender it undid me. I leaned forward slightly, breath trembling, but she stopped me with the faintest shake of her head. Not rejection, restraint. She leaned in instead and pressed her lips softly to my cheek. It was brief, almost innocent, but the way she lingered there, her breath warm against my skin, carried more weight than any kiss could. When she pulled back, her eyes shimmered with something between fear and longing. This, whatever it is, she said softly. I don't want to lose it, even if it has to stay small. I nodded, my chest tight but strangely full. I don't want to lose it either. The words settled between us, simple yet binding. And then, for the first time, it felt like the tension wasn't pulling us apart, but quietly holding us together. When my friend's footsteps sounded on the stairs, we both sat back slightly, the moment folding neatly into silence. But the warmth of her hand on my cheek, the whisper of her lips against my skin, that stayed with me. It wasn't a grand confession. It wasn't fireworks. It was something quieter, something real, something ours. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves slow burn romance as much as you do. Your support helps me create more heartfelt stories like this one.